first Confederate invasion of Union-held territory did not go as planned. Following the Union victory at South Mountain and the Confederate victory at Harper's Ferry, Confederate General Robert E. Lee hoped to fight a final battle to salvage his Maryland campaign as Federal forces approached from the east. Lee selected a strategic location near Antietam Creek and ordered his army to take up positions there. This position was approximately 1 mile east of Sharpsburg. The creek meanders through open, hilly terrain, suitable for long-range artillery and mobile infantry. The water was deep and crossed by only 3 stone bridges, making it a natural defensive position. On September 15th, Lee positioned his men behind the creek and awaited the arrival of Mullen, the Union commander. The force under Lee's direct command numbered no more than 18,000 men, only 1/3 the size of the Federal Army. The first 2 Union divisions arrived on the afternoon of September 15th. The majority of the remaining army arrived late that evening, although an immediate Union attack on the morning of September 16th would have achieved overwhelming numerical superiority. McLean's usual caution, believing Lee had as many as 100,000 men at Sharpsburg, delayed his attack by a day. This gave the Confederates more time to prepare their defensive positions and allowed more Confederate troops to arrive immediately. On the evening of September 16th, McLean ordered Hooker's Corps to cross Adams Creek and reconnoiter the enemy positions. The division cautiously attacked Hood's forces near the eastern woods, where McLean planned to overrun the enemy's left flank. The skirmish near the eastern woods indicated Mullen's intentions to Lee, who prepared his defences accordingly. Mullen shifted his men to his left flank and sent urgent messages to his 2 commanders, who had not yet arrived on the battlefield. Mullen's plans were poorly coordinated and poorly executed. The battlefield made it difficult for these commanders to monitor events outside their sectors. Furthermore, Mullen's headquarters was more than a mile to the rear, making it difficult for him to control the disjointed corps. This lack of coordination and concentration of Mullen's forces virtually eliminated their superiority. It also allowed Lee to shift his defensive forces to meet each attack. The battle began at dawn on September 17th with an attack by the Union First Corps under Joseph Hooker. Hooker's objective was the plateau on which Dunker Church stood, and his men numbered approximately 8,600. Jackson's defense consisted of divisions under Alexander Lott and J.R. Jones, and a line extending from the western woods across the highway and along the southern edge of Miller's cornfield. 4 brigades were held in reserve within the western woods, and the Union men launched the attack on the Confederate forces. Union forces managed to push the Confederates back from eastward to westward. As they advanced, they came within range of Confederate artillery, inflicting heavy losses on both sides. The situation was described as artillery hell. At this point, Major General Ricketts, the Union commander, launched a crushing attack on the Confederates, pushing them back from their positions. General Lee, noticing that this area of the battlefield was about to collapse, sent reinforcements under Hood to fortify it. Hood's 2,300-strong division advanced through westward and repulsed the Union forces. The Texans attacked with such ferocity that, after being called from their reserve positions, they had to cut short their first hot breakfast in days. Hood's men bore the brunt of the fighting, but were able to prevent the collapse of the defensive line. Hooker's men also paid a heavy price, but they did not achieve their objectives. 2 hours later, with 2,500 casualties, they returned to where they started in the cornfield near In the woods, the area saw violent skirmishes with rifle butts and bayonets due to poor visibility in the cornfields. Officers reported hearing curses and shouts, but no one could be heard over the noise. The cornfield was a scene of indescribable devastation. It was estimated that the cornfield had changed hands at least 15 times during the morning. Many accounts indicate that this area saw some of the fiercest fighting in the entire American Civil War. At this point in the battle, Mullen asked Hooker to move Union troops against the Confederate left. Mansfield was asked to attack the Confederate center. Mansfield saw that Lee had sent Confederate reinforcements to the combat areas in the woods and cornfields. For this reason, he decided to move his troops to assist his Union comrades rather than listen to Mullen's order to attack the center while his men marched toward it. Mansfield's comrades were forced to dismount because his horse refused to cross the fence as he advanced, and he was fatally shot. An unidentified Union soldier likely mistook him for an enemy scout. Meanwhile, Hooker was shot in the foot on the battlefield. The Union lost 2 key generals. General Williams assumed command, but his intelligence proved insufficient, and he resumed the Union attack. Union forces emerged from the woods and headed toward Dunker Church on the plateau, and the battle raged. At this point, the deputy commander of the Union Corps, General Sawyer Rooke, joined the fight. The Confederates held firm and repelled any Union attacks. They moved more troops from their southern positions to the north to assist in the fighting. The Confederates launched a counterattack on the Union forces in the woods. Once reinforcements arrived, they cleared the woods and pushed the Union forces back. The Union 6th Corps, under General Franklin, arrived and intended to attack the Confederates. However, Sumner, who had just withdrawn, wanted to continue the withdrawal, and fighting erupted. The morning phase ended with casualties on both sides of approximately 13,000 killed, including 2 key Union commanders. All that happened at this point was that control of a cornfield in the woods changed hands several times. By midday, the fighting had moved to the center of the Confederate line to the east. The Confederates, under General Hill, were fighting Union troops on Bloody Lane. The Union attempted several attacks on General Hill's position, but each failed. The Confederates attempted their own attack, but were repulsed to their original position. The Confederate troops on the Union right were then ordered to advance to envelop the Union flank. Somehow the orders were misunderstood, and the Confederate right began to withdraw. This led to a series of retreats, and Bloody Lane finally fell to the Union. By this point in the battle, only a few Confederate troops remained. The remaining Union forces on the south side of the battlefield were ordered to march across the Antietam Creek Bridge and capture the heights. The Confederates defending the bridge fought fiercely. Since most of the Confederate forces had been sent to the northern part of the battlefield, they were outnumbered and quickly repulsed. At this point, the fighting in the north ground to a standstill, with all of Leah's men either dead, wounded, or too tired to continue fighting. However, before the battle began, Lee sent a message to nearby troops asking for help. Reinforcements were under Hill's command, and at this time the first elements of his force began to arrive. Lee's only hope was that the main force under Hill would arrive on the scene immediately. The Union launched another attack on the Confederates. Despite a good start, Hill's men arrived on the battlefield to aid the struggling Confederates. More troops poured into the battle, and control changed hands several times. The stalemate continued until nightfall. By the end of the day, the Union had suffered 12,500 dead and wounded, while the Confederates had suffered 10,500. These were heavy losses without a clear victory. Nevertheless, the Confederate army had been defeated, and Lee's general staff urged it to withdraw. Lee initially refused, but was eventually persuaded to withdraw. During the 12 hours of fighting, nearly 25,000 Americans were killed and wounded, making it the bloodiest day in American history.